This week we have Kyle Jackson with us. What's up, man?
Hey, not too much.
I'm glad
I'm
to have you. Glad to have you on. It's kind of funny. We're you've got a podcast,
hmm
and I'll have you tell us about that here in a little bit. Um, but you've got a podcast, and we just recorded an episode with yours,
hmm
and now we're doing one, getting your side of the story, and
hmm
uh, and so I want you guys. We're probably going to release this both around the same time. So I want to encourage you guys, go check out his podcast and check that episode out. But Kyle, you've been part of the group a little while, and part of this musical community, and I just kind of want to, first, kind of, how did you find your way into this community?
well, I kind of found it through I call it the wormhole podcast because I started off, once I entered the smartphone world extremely late, like 3 years ago. And so I was like, oh, look at this. There's these things called podcasts and you have interest. Well, somehow I found the Chasing Tone podcast and I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then from there, I heard about the Tone Mob. And then from there, I heard about 60 Cycle Hum. And then it was the Gear Slum. And then somewhere along there, I heard this show about the Clifton Worley show. So I was like, oh, Gear podcast. I'm going to check it out. And I was like, oh, this is not the same. Nothing against those other shows, but those kind of are sometimes can be the same thing, told three different ways. So I kind of found it that way. And then I found the group and kind of realized we were talking in the last episode about how it's not necessarily just about guitar playing. It's about, your life in general involving the guitar. And I really enjoyed that. And it was kind of a place that I could kind of, be myself in the group, I guess I would say, versus having to try and, pretend that I'm getting gear every single day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that a lot of people have made that kind of journey through this podcast to the next podcast, and
hmm
um, you know, I'm always like super late to the party,
hmm
and so I started listening like to 60 Cycle Hum, I guess maybe about a year and a half ago.
hmm
And I knew they were out like way longer before, but I didn't really understand podcast, and so I I want to ask you, like, how did you decide that you were going to do a podcast?
Well, actually, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I had one buddy that was like kind of interning at our local church, and we said we were going to start a podcast. That was our idea. We kept talking about it. We'd go to camps, and every camp we'd say, "Man, we're going to have a podcast going by the next year." We'll like cycle ahead 3 years and like three different people that we've been talking with, and it was supposed to be me, which it's called Bibster and the Ginger Podcast, and I'm called Bibster because I'm always wearing bib overalls, and then my buddy's called Ginger because he is redheaded. That's kind of where our name comes from. It's real cheesy. But finally, it was supposed to be me, him, and this other guy, and we could never get the third guy because I'd heard enough. I heard quite a few podcasts. I mean, yours when you have the Whirlybirds on, where there's three people, and I'm like, we got to have three people. Like all these other podcasts I listen to, there's always at least three people in the conversations. So we had this other friend of ours, and we could just never get a hold of him to basically like record one. So finally, one night I came home from work on a Saturday, and my buddy Ginger was at the time he was living with us, and I said, hey, we're going to record one tonight. Like, I don't care. We have all the equipment already. We're going to record one right now. And that's kind of how it started. It literally was like, I came home and said, we're going to record one right now. And then we like put one out there to see what would happen. And then we just started the first like 3 or 4 episodes were just, I call them morning show radio, because that's all we were doing. It was like, talking about Kevin Costner movies, but, nothing too serious. But yeah, I kind of got into it because I'd heard, between your podcast and other podcasts, and I really wanted to try and get into that. And so that's kind of what made me just finally go, I'm going to start one and see how it goes. And it's been, it's not the fastest growing thing in the world, but it's been a lot of fun to see a community start to kind of build around it and, get to see and what I really like about it is getting to talk to people and tell their stories. Like I just told your story, and we've had everyone on from race car drivers to people that run YouTube channels and just telling their story to an audience that they normally couldn't tell their story to.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's the. I think everybody should have an outlet. And I used to think everybody should be podcasting,
Hmm.
but I realized that's probably not um, feasible because
Yeah.
everybody's not going to want to do a podcast.
Hmm.
But like everybody needs a outlet for whatever they're doing. It could be any subject matter, but whether that's
Hmm.
writing a book, writing a blog, doing a podcast,
Hmm.
you know, being a YouTuber, like I think everybody has an outlet where they can take what they do and extend it beyond themselves to include other people.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what's been, and that's what's been really fun about it is we started off, and the reason why we call it Bibster, like I said, we do the whole like as our overalls, but it's actually from, and we didn't talk about this the last one. It stemmed from me getting into doing race announcing. I started doing race announcing last summer, and I had to kind of come up with a name for myself because it wasn't, when you go to an event and saying, "Hey, I'm Kyle Jackson," people are just like, "What?" But when you go and say, "Hey, I'm Bibster," or or is this Bibster Promotions? They're like, "Oh, that's what that is." And so it stemmed kind of from that, and it was able to take. The other thought I had with the podcast was I wanted to be able to take what I did there with like a small community and kind of expand that and kind of show like, oh, hey, like this race that people won't normally go and see, we can tell their story, and then maybe the next week, people are going to want to come and see this race because they know some of the stories. And so, yeah, but I think everybody should do something to express themselves. If it's not, if it's not making content on YouTube or doing a podcast or writing a blog, because right now, like the advantage is up to a certain degree, you can put a lot of this stuff out for free, and you can do it, with minimum equipment. You know, there's a ton of YouTubers that do all of their footage off of an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're not. I mean, yes, when you want to get to the high level, you need to have the high level equipment. But what we use for our podcast is literally $30 Amazon mics and like $150 Behringer board that's a direct interface to my computer. So and it's like we didn't have to go out and spend a bunch of money to get into it. We had to spend a little bit, yes, but it wasn't like we were investing thousands of dollars into this setup so that way we could put our content out there. I think if you have a story to tell or if you have an idea that you want to show the rest of the world, and I think that's really important because in today's time, like we're so connected with the internet, we're so connected with other people that you can also kind of get lost in that and kind of just like take a step back and just kind of watch what everyone else is doing. Kind of like me at middle school dances. I was just watching everything happen. I wasn't involved. I was staying in the corner. But I think it's right now is a perfect opportunity to jump in and try something. And we kind of started because I said one day we're not going to sit around. And I think if you have an idea or if you have a dream that you want to do, in 5 years it might be a different world where it might cost you like a bunch to put stuff up. I was talking to YouTubers and they were saying how like it is getting harder with your content. Like you have to make it like look a certain way and have a certain kind of clickbaitiness to it, so that way it can gets the same amount of viewers. And so you just don't know what's going to happen with that. But I think if you have a dream, you have something you want to try and do, it's definitely feasible, and you can definitely do it without having to like get a second mortgage on your house.
Yeah. Well, and that's I think it's the same way with podcasts. Podcasts definitely don't have the reach I think that YouTube does,
Hmm.
but not everybody wants to create video content.
Yeah.
But you know, we might have gotten to the point where like the first adapters of podcast are gonna get a huge lion's share of the listenership,
Hmm.
and maybe there's a lot smaller communities that kind of grow out from out that. But I think it's essential for people to tell their stories no matter what, and
Hmm.
everything doesn't have to be corporate, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah.
It's not be you don't have to be doing it nowadays. You don't have to do it from like you don't have to be doing it in front of a bunch of people to tell your story. 20, 30 years ago, in order to tell your story to somebody, either A, had to like get a job at a newspaper as an editor, or do this. There wasn't the same kind of market, and you couldn't get the same kind of we have a whole generation of people who have become like famous because of them basically putting content out there and people enjoying it. And I think it's not that I don't want to say it sound like, oh, I started this podcast because I wanted to become some like famous podcaster. Like not at all. Like our numbers are literally like I usually tell people like we are, I can count majority of like in the first week I can count like with between me and Alex's hands and feet our listeners for like the first week. But I'm like it's at least something. Instead of it's more than if we were just sitting back and not putting not doing anything with it. And we've had people like once in a while we'll be at events. So we try and do stuff like if we're gonna have a big race coming up, we try and have like something about that race the week before. So we'll have people that are like, oh hey, I listened, and we're like, oh whoa, like that there's real people that do that.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I think that was the first couple of times that happened. It was kind of like whoa, like this actually people actually hear this. Like I kind of just in my head think like, is the website just telling me we have listeners so they feel better? They're like, oh, this guy keeps putting content out. Like we should just pad his numbers a little. But yeah, I think it's been a lot of fun, and it's been something that I've always wanted to do, and I kind of got into it, just by just trying it. So
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about where you're from and kind of how that plays a background into your story.
yeah. I currently live in Fulton, Illinois, which is basically this little itty bitty Dutch community on the Mississippi River. Like when I say it's Dutch community, we have a windmill and we have a festival where all the locals wear wooden shoes. So, which I'm actually originally from Iowa, but it kind of plays into it because it's a very rural community. Basically around here, you either work for a factory, you work for a farmer, or you work for an industry that is involved with that factory or farmer.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of blue collar. Just kind of a I won't say rough, but just kind of there's not skyscrapers. There's not it's not a busy community. It's kind of a simpler, that's kind of what made me who I am because it's not like, that's what I enjoy. If we go on a vacation or on a trip and we're in a big town, I'm like, all right, this is cool. Like, I want to go back out. Like, so yeah, that's kind of where I'm from and kind of, I was, like I said, I grew up in Clinton, and I kind of got into instruments and music I actually played drums when I was a kid, and I played drums all the way up through high school, and then basically kind of just stopped playing drums, and I had a full drum set, and I couldn't really take it with me everywhere, so I kind of just left it at my parents' house for a while when I was moving around, and then I finally traded it off because I was like, I'm not going to play the drums anymore. They're not really my thing. So I had the genius idea I was going to get an acoustic guitar and find YouTube and try and learn. That was like 2012. Fast forward like 4 years, still terrible at it because I had not consistently playing. And I ended up there was a kind of a void in our youth group's worship team. And I kind of was like, well, I think I could kind of play some. And so I started playing more there. And that kind of turned into now playing on the Sunday morning team and playing more electric stuff and like really having to practice, because that was the problem before. I bought a guitar thinking like that would make me want to learn to play guitar, because I always wanted to learn guitar, because as a kid, as I love being a drummer, but you couldn't be at your friend's house and pull out your drum set and like screw around and play, but your buddy that could play guitar could pull his guitar out and like noodle away on it, and I was always like, aw. So that's kind of what kind of got me into guitar. It kind of got me into, like I said, the whole gear world, and kind of was like, oh, there's this whole like side of the internet that is really into not just playing, but like what they use and what their tone's like, and this whole like kind of like, not to plug another podcast, but like this like chasing tone of like chasing what your sound is. And so, which, I think I kind of quote unquote figured out what my sound is, because I was kind of having to get to the point of I needed to improve at this point. I'm realizing I need to improve my skill versus just buying like a pedal that I think will make me sound better. Like I need to take time to actually improve how I play.
Yeah. And that's interesting dynamic. 'Cause I know at the time when I was learning how to play, like I wish there was this kind of community available when I was learning to play, because it was usually like, oh, you go to church with this person and they know how to play drums, so maybe I ought to get together with them and try to like play something, right?
Hmm.
Um, and you know, other guitar players might be people like that I only saw once or twice a year, like some camp I went to or something like that. And so, like, it was so few and far between. And I thought it was comical. You know, you talked about how like you shifted from drums to guitar.
Hmm.
I had friends who played drums and other instruments and stuff, and it was like all my friends, I was teaching them how to play guitar so like, we could all play together.
Hmm.
And but I knew several people who started out on drums, and they would move over to guitar because that was a more like portable instrument.
Yeah. Oh, that was half of it for me. Well, and I could play that like at the time we had I was in college and we had, or I was just out of college and we had this house and it was like five dudes living in one house. It was a If you're a parent and your 19-year-old kid says he's moving in with five of his buddies into like one house, just go ahead and lock him in the basement. 'Cause that's nothing good's gonna come of that. But it was something I could sit around and play. The problem is I was never that good, so like I never people would always see me with like different guitars, and of course like I did the guitar was hard, so then I bought like a ukulele because that was easy. So then I went like on like a stream of like, oh, I'm gonna get a bunch of different ukuleles because these are fun, and then I realized like these are kind of toys. I need to figure out like back to the roots. But so that kind of was also like a dangerous quote unquote thought, track record of like me just like trying to learn an instrument, thinking, oh, I'm not that good at it, and then finding something that I think might be easier and just trying to go to that instead of just staying back with like the root instrument. So now I end up with a basement full of random instruments that I'm like, oh, I can kind of play most of them, sort of. But yeah, I think going from guitar, the advantage is if you're a drummer, and this is what I found, was that I had the rhythm thing down. So like playing acoustic guitar, like figuring out strumming patterns was like so gravy. Because I've had other people that were like, wait, what are you doing for the strum? And I'm like, it's just this. Can't you hear it? And like I didn't realize that as a drummer, like as some people are trained to like, oh, I can hear like exactly what note that is. I could hear the rhythm in it, so I was like, oh, that's what this sounds like. So that's what really helped, and it helped me my timing be really good. And actually, when we get back to drums, I just got my first drum set again, so that way I can actually, because I want to get back into it because I haven't drummed for like 10 years now, and so I just actually I got an electric because ain't no way in my basement of my house I'm gonna be able to wail on a drum set like I could when I was in fourth grade. That would be bad. Yeah.
Yeah, so you made this transition where you kind of picked up guitar just really 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, what are you doing? Like, talk to me about your context of where you're playing and what you're doing.
So what I play, so Wednesday nights I lead our youth ministries worship band. So that's where I'm just playing my acoustic, and I have a Martin the X custom. It's got like the not particle board, but it's got like the laminated boards for sides and the neck. And I play my acoustic there. And then on Sunday mornings I'm actually playing rhythm. I've been playing rhythm guitar electric, which is basically, so I'm just playing me and this one other guy. I was trying to figure out what he was doing. I was like, wait, are you just playing bar chords? He's like, yeah. I'm like, perfect. Like, I don't have to do all the noodly like wheedly stuff. And so I play rhythm there, and then actually I'll be doing probably some bass there too as well in this next. I just looked at my schedule actually today in the next quarter. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm playing out. Like I don't play in a band or anything. I just play really at church, and which is really fun because up until I started playing in church, like I wasn't ever playing with anybody. And I would definitely know. I've always heard people say like when you play with other people, it makes you want to play more, and it makes you have to play better. And that's exactly it, because like I kind of usually, like our one electric player he's played in bands like his entire life, and he's like phenomenal. Like the one Sunday morning we were playing a song. It was kind of like it was going pretty good. Like everything was going really well. If you're in a worship band, you know exactly what I'm saying. It's like where God is moving. We're like rocking out back there. And then I look over at him. He's just like straight gone. Like he's just. I mean, he was all, but not like playing over the top. Like it was very like tasteful. But like I just looked over. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like he's just going. And I'm like back there like playing my power chords like, like dang, like huh Brent, like that's something else that we got done. He's like, and he's like, the one service, he's like, oh, I screwed something up on that. I'm like, you screwed something up on that. I'm like, I played half the song in the wrong key because I didn't have my music right. Like, let's not talk about screwing stuff up. But yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing. And that actually just started. I just started playing like at our church like probably 3 months ago. So that's all kind of still new. And that whole side of things kind of new to me. The youth group ministry I've been doing for about 2 years, but that's, you know, I always tell people that are wanting to get into it, I said, youth group's great because most youth kids don't know if you screw something up. You know, most of them, if I come in like way hot on a song or something, I mean, half the time it was just me and an acoustic up there. So if I came in like my hand, it was supposed to be a 6/8 song and my hand wasn't switching over from the 4/4 song before, I could like just be like, okay, hand, when we get to the bridge, you're gonna like, when we get to this verse, you're gonna change right here, and it's like stop, break, and then it changes. So it's not as less pressure, I always say, or well, sometimes more, but at least if you screw up, you're the only one that usually knows it. So as long as your face doesn't show it, you're okay.
Yeah, totally.
Usually,
fake it till you make it, right?
oh yeah, it's very much a fake it till you. We did that this last week. We had a women's conference at our church, and before it was like 2 different sets. We played a set in the morning, and then we played a set at the very end. And before that last set, we didn't have time to sound check or anything. And I leaned over to the lead electric player. I said, "Hey, what key is this song in?" And he said, "Oh, it's in D." I said, "All right, cool." I had it in C and D, so I put it up in D. And the song starts, and I'm listening like, this doesn't sound right. And I don't have the best ear, but I'm like, I like literally like half play a chord. I'm like, this isn't right. Like something's wrong here. So at first, you know, I'm thinking like, oh, my guitar must be out of tune. Let me tune this thing up. Oh, it's dead on. And like I look over at the lead guitar player, and he's in the same key as I am, and I'm like, well, man. And then I like try and eyeball the lead, our worship leader, and she plays keyboard, and I can barely see like the top right of her music. I'm like, I think that's a C. And as I'm realizing that, the lead player's realizing, yep, we're in the wrong key. So he's switching his on his iPad, and he looks over at me like, we're in C. So by like the bridge, we had it down. It was bad. We were just like, we got done with the song. We're like, well, we don't say that we both had it completely wrong, but yeah. So, but it's cool. What I really like about our church is that you know, when I don't feel like if I did screw something up, you know, the worship leader is gonna look at me like, get off the stage, like you just screwed something up. It's usually like, I mean, if I royally screwed something up, then yeah, but as long as it's all within, you know, they'd be more mad about like if you did something that was untasteful, you know, like throwing the guitar or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what I'm doing playing wise right now.
Well, what's like your tools of choice there?
Well, let me think. See, we were talking to on the last episode about how I have a collection of I like my subpar guitars. So like my nicest guitar, and it's not even my number one because I don't play it as much, is I have an Epiphone Les Paul. It's the standard Pro, so it's got the pole pots. That's like for me, that's my nice guitar. But what I've been playing the most is actually last year I saw some YouTube videos about those Harley Benton, those guitars from Thomann.
Yeah.
And I picked up the TE70 black paisley, and then the TE90 that's got the P90s in it, and it's like the hollow body. And I've actually been playing the P90 is the one, or the TE90 is the one I just played last week at church on Sunday morning. And the first time I played it, I didn't have my EQ pedal. I actually don't think I had it at the time, so it was just super muddy, but I got it actually dialed in so it wasn't as bad, because the first time I was like, this guitar is trash, like I need new pickups right now. And I think I'm going to be able to avoid those. But yeah, those are actually probably like the two I played the most. And then I have a parts caster that I bought from a guy about 45 minutes from here that he takes like Squire bodies and Mighty Mite necks and then puts them all together himself. So again, it was like a really affordable because it's all kind of like, you know, this part and this part and this part. But that thing, it plays beautiful. So that's kind of probably like if when I'm going for one of my three, it's usually one of those.
Yeah.
But it kind of, you know, I have a few other ones that I've collected over the years just because, you know, buddy's got a guitar for $50. Oh, I'll buy it, you know. I'm kind of the king of that, which is fun. I mean, in order to like get away with that, you have to learn how to fix your own stuff, which I like doing, you know, and being able to like, and knowing like, oh, you know, if I have to be able to think like, if I take this guitar to church and I get there and something's completely wrong with it, because I've pulled the guitars off the rack before and not played them. Like I practiced on a different one. I'm going to take one to church, and I get to church and the next way out of alignment, and I'm like, oh, I don't have my tools with me. I had a practice once where it was actually my Epiphone, my Les Paul. I hadn't played it for like a while, and I was practicing on a different one, but I'm like, oh, I want to take that one. I haven't played that one for a while. Didn't realize the humidity had changed because we're up here in the north where we get all 4 seasons in a week sometimes. So the neck had bowed. So I literally strum it, just I'm like, oh, and we're at practice, and I'm like, this is youth practice, so it wasn't like where I could kind of fake it. I was like, well, all right, boys, I'm gonna lead, but I'm not gonna play my guitar because I can't play this in right now. So that's the disadvantage of having, lower end, we'll say. But yeah, I like having that, and then I play through a Boss Katana 100, and then I have a little pedal board that I made out of some 1-bys. That's basically nothing too special, some Boss stuff. I have a couple pedals that Wampler modded for me. I have a Metal Zone that's modded to be an EQ now. So I always laugh when my first pedal my first pedal in my chain is a Metal Zone when I'm at church, which I think is kind of funny. People always laugh. They're like, "Why do you have Metal Zone?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's an EQ pedal. Like, it is completely clean. It's the most beautiful thing in the world, but it's like EQ, like Metal Zone right away." Which I have our one lead guitar player. He got it for free. This is one of those, like, hear those like garage store or those garage sale stories. He got it for free because the guy was trying to get rid of a Boss heavy metal, the HM2, for $5, and no one would buy it. Apparently no one likes Swedish death metal around here. So he gave it to him, and he's got it on there on Sunday morning. I'm like, what are you using that for? And he's like, oh, he's got distortion cranked down, so he uses like a clean boost, which is so finicky. I keep wanting him to like give him one of mine, but here, use anything else. But I looked at it the one time, and it's a made in Japan one. I'm like, dude, I was like, this is like this is the old one. Like, this is worth something. He's like, oh, is it? And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
So he realizes he got a free like the made in Japan Boss pedal, and I'm like, yeah, that's like, where was I at that sale? But
those are actually Sean Pierce Johnson. He's a YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
He plays like heavy music, and he did a video recently, and there's a trend right now where people are taking and running those like through their effects loop.
Mm-hmm.
And they're using it as like a high gain preamp, and it nails like those higher gain tones and sounds way much better like run it that way through an amp, because a lot of times, and he made a very good point in his video, and just go check it out if you're listening.
Yeah.
He can tell the story better than I can, but that when they made the Metal Zone, a lot of the amps were really, really clean, okay? But now, like, people can get, and there's a lot of dirty amps on the market, and when you take that pedal and try to run it through a dirty amp, it's gonna sound trashy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And so, like, there's a use for that pedal. There's a secret weapon there that a lot of people don't know about, but...
Oh, I saw that. When that whole trend happened like a month ago, I was over here like, dang it. I already get, like, this one's already fixed, but now I'm like, I can't even try it now. So I was about to go buy another Metal Zone because I was like, well, I want to try it. And then I thought, well, I'm never going to play in a metal band or need heavy tone. And for what I could do, I could probably get my Katana to sound close enough. But yeah, I saw that and I was like, this would have happened like 3 months ago. I probably wouldn't have set this pedal off.
Yeah.
I bought it like, when I was doing the whole, like, that first 4 years of playing guitar where I wasn't really playing very much. It was more like it was a novelty. Like, I'd play guitar for a couple months and be like really getting at it, and then I would set it down for a while. And so that's the only thing I can encourage you. If you want to get into guitar, like, do not do what I did where you just try and start, like, actually commit to it. Because that was my main issue, was that I just, like, didn't just stick with it. I kept just like, oh, I don't want to do that. I got really busy. I'm not committed to it. And I kind of had to get to the point where a lot of it was because I had to learn how to, like, I had to get better at it, like, in like a course of a couple months, when all of a sudden I was going to have to be playing acoustic in front of people versus only playing, in my room, like, to my cat. So yeah, I think that's kind of, and I think that's always funny too with YouTube, where like whatever, like especially in guitar, it's well all YouTube channels do it because there's like like the trick shot or like whatever YouTube channel it is. There's like these trends that will like literally just go around for like a week. Like one channel will do something, and then suddenly every channel has to make the video about it, and then like it all goes away. And then the next week it's whatever, which I was laughing. I'm like, I'm glad I don't do YouTube right now because I couldn't keep up with like the, having to stay on top of everything like that. But
Yeah, it becomes. I think we talked about this earlier, but it kind of becomes where everybody's competing for the same story. It's kind of
yep,
like if you kind of like on you watch like old Spider-Man or something, and it's like the newspaper there's like trying to like be the first one with the breaking news,
hmm
and everybody's in a race to do the best piece, the best story, on a particular thing.
hmm yeah, I think that's, and it's just kind of, and then whoever does it first, and everyone else, you end up realizing like, okay, I can just like watch one of them. But yeah, there is kind of a small market, and you have to kind of bring something different, which is like what I said. That's kind of what made me when I found your guys' show. It was like, oh, this isn't just this is different, and really like all the guitar podcasts that I listen to, there's something a little different about each one. It's not like any of them are really recycling the same thing. Like the Gear Slum jokes around about that they are, but they all take a different perspective and a different side of the story versus just telling the same story. And that kind of comes down to like if you want to tell a story and you want to, put yourself out there, even if you do the same thing that somebody else is doing, putting your spin on it and putting your take on it is going to be, that's what makes it special. A lot of times people aren't watching. I've watched a ton of videos and listened to a ton of podcasts on products and stuff that I have no intention of ever buying, but I watch it or I listen to it because the person that puts the content on, I like them as a person, and I've grown to become a fan of them, and I like to see what they're doing, and so it becomes more than just what necessarily the story is about. It's deeper than that.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Well, tell us a little bit about kind of what you're trying to do with your podcast, and kind of where you're, the direction you're headed. And I don't think I've asked you like how long you've been doing this. And
Yeah, yeah. So we started the podcast back in January of this year. We, like I said, it was kind of, we had to do it. I started doing the Bibster thing. That's what, I said, I call myself Bibster because I'm always wearing bib overalls, and I'm doing that for the last few years, mostly because I'm a bigger guy, and as a bigger guy, you find that you don't end up, being a plumber if you're wearing bibs. That was always a joke whenever I'd be places. So I just started wearing bibs all the time, and it became kind of my MO. I always tell people, you just start dressing like a cartoon character, wear almost the same thing every day. It's life. Life is easy. So I started the Bibster thing last year, and that actually exploded this last year. And this isn't really gear necessarily related, so it's kind of coming out of left field. But it was doing stuff with races. So it started off with doing live announcing, actually with lawnmower racing. Never seen lawnmower racing. If you're listening, seriously, go check it out. It's nuts. These guys are insane. I got involved in that, and then I got involved in, actually, we just had our last one with our local mud bogging track around here. So I was doing live announcing for that. This is all on the side of like my regular 9 to 5-ish job. And so I did that, and then I got involved with a dirt track. And so we're actually looking to do with between the podcast and kind of like we call it Bibster Promotions, is what I actually call it's not a real company, it's just what I call myself. Is we're looking at actually live streaming races and live stream other events. So like what we'll do is we go to an event, set up cameras, and then we use our audio equipment to do the like TV style announcing over the race. And so instead of trying to, because you can never hear when you go to local events like that are really loud, you can never hear what the person's saying because it's like, the cars are really loud. So what we do is we actually use our mics and our equipment, so that way it's people actually, from what we've seen and had happen to people, it's like watching, like when you watch NASCAR at home. We're not obviously, our cameras aren't obviously at that level, but it's like we bring high energy. So we're looking at like kind of I would call it a hobby that's bleeding money, is to take it into something that's more part-time, where I can actually dedicate more time to it versus now trying to like fit in work and then go to a race and do that.
yeah,
So that's kind of what we're looking at doing, is mean, I'd love to be able to go full time, like, between doing live feed stuff and then doing race stuff, and then it's going to open up the gear side stuff because I'll have more time. I won't have to go, oh, I work all week and then go to races all weekend and then go back the next weekend.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I've always I like that idea. I think that doesn't matter, like whatever hobby you're in, whatever. Like
hmm
these events is uh, obviously people that can't be there at these
Yep.
things,
Yep.
and when you can extend that, I think that's just awesome that you can extend that to other people
hmm
through a platform that's so easy. Now you can see like there's tons of churches that don't have the budget for multi cameras and all this stuff, and they're broadcasting their services now like somebody in the back, and you know sometimes the quality on that's maybe not the best,
hmm
but I think that's awesome that like almost anything that event that you can't be a part of like in real time, like it's getting easier and easier and easier to be a part of things.
Yeah. And it's easy for us because we literally just put it up on Facebook. So like
Yeah.
all we have to do is we run like right now we're running a one camera system. We're looking at if I can get enough stuff over the winter, we're gonna get one. There's a few softwares that like either one ties in a bunch of regular cameras through a mixer, and then the one that uses a bunch of just devices. So between iPads and iPhones, and then you use an iPad to do your switching, and it's just kind of whatever way I want to go with it. But it's super easy because you just do that, and then we run an iRig. So we run an iRig off of our soundboard into our camera, so that way we're not getting all of the, because what basically our videos end up being is you hear the race cars, but they're not overpowering.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, we had an event they call it the Night of Destruction, where it's basically like a demo derby, but they do it on a racetrack. It's absolutely insane. I was so glad we were on the roof of a building because we were far away from all the damage. But we had people from we had some people in Alaska watching, and we had people in Florida watching. So I was telling them like, we got people all over watching this thing, and it was just out of this little town that's about 45 minutes away from here. That normally, they are like people are like, we've never seen stuff like this, and I'm like, neither have we, but the platform's out there, and that's what I think. It's so easy to do it now. I mean, like literally, I basically Facebook does the legwork of like taking the video and putting it up, and then it allows us to be able to put it right into people's phones that they have in their hands at all times, and then they can interact with us while we're doing stuff. Like we'll have people talking back to us on the chat, and we can interact that way. But yeah, it's really fun. It's something that's like I didn't think we were gonna do that when I started this year off. Like I actually, all I really wanted to do this year was I wanted to announce a tractor pull. That was my goal. Didn't actually do that, but I did way more, so it's fine. But like I walked into like I want to announce a tractor pull. It's gonna be cool, and then I ended up getting busier and busier, and but yeah, so that's kind of where I'm headed and what I'm kind of doing. So if it's something, not to shamelessly plug myself, but if it's something you're thinking about or want to check out, Bibster Promotions on Facebook is the kind of the main page, and then the podcast page can be found from there and all that. So
Awesome, awesome. So and so you can find the podcast there.
yeah, or you can find the podcast at Bibster and the Ginger podcast on Facebook as well.
Okay.
There's a separate page for it, but I mean, I drop like it starts off on the one page and it works its way. They all kind of intermingle with each other, mostly because it makes it easier that way. But yeah, so if you find one, you're gonna easily find the other one if you find either one of them.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I just want to encourage my listeners, go check out what Kyle's doing, and his show, um, and just been a blast having you on and being part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks again for coming on. Coming hanging out on my show first, and it was great to be able to. This is the first one I've had where someone's like, "Hey, I want to, do the opposite." I'm like, "Oh, all right." So I hope it doesn't too hack. I was hacking through trying to remember what else.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's a double bonus for both of our listeners. We can just here's two shows this week. So go check out that episode, and then go check out this one likewise. So
All right.
well, thanks, man.
All right. Thanks.